To AgriTalk, and thank you for keeping it KTN Farmers TV. Today we are talking about rangeland and grassland management. And with me today is Professor Jesse Theuri Njoka, who is a retired academician, especially when it comes to rangeland management. Welcome to the show, Professor.
Thank you, sir.
When we talk about rangelands and grasslands, what are we talking about exactly?
We are talking about more than 3/4 of the country, Kenya, and within the IGAD region, close to 70% of the land are grasslands and rangelands.
Okay.
In actual fact, grasslands can be subsumed in the category of rangelands because rangelands have a lot of diversity. You have dryland forests, you have wetlands, you have all kinds of small niches that is not clearly defined. Actually, rangelands are areas where we don't do agriculture. Grasslands can be in higher potential areas where it's higher rainfall, but they can also be classified as rangelands because they are natural. But once it turns into agriculture, you cultivate them, that's a different ballgame.
Okay. So what are the importance of these two ecosystems?
Those two ecosystems, I could say, is the lifeline of the country, of the world. Because globally, we say rangelands, grasslands constitute over 50% of the dry earth, which means all the ecosystem services that we derive from nature, most of it come from rangelands. For example, the meat, if you look at the grasslands, most of our crops that come from areas that have been converted from grasslands to croplands, we depend on a few crops, wheat and so forth. So they are very important economically, and the rest of the world cannot grow or develop without paying attention to these neglected areas of the rangelands.
Do the rangelands, apart from just providing pasture for livestock, especially for beef, do they really have anything in common, the two of them, rangelands and grasslands?
Yes, they have a lot in common because the grasslands and bushlands, they kind of intermingle. You cannot really separate them that clearly. You may have meadows in a forest where you have grasslands, but most of the grasslands are in the rangeland areas. And these areas are defined by the amount of rainfall that they get. And if we use the evaporation ratio, if you have 10 inches of rainfall and you have evaporation of 90%, we say the evaporation ratio compared to the rainfall is maybe 5%. I mean, the higher the evaporation ratio compared to the rainfall, the drier the area.
Okay.
So according to the international definition of where the dryland rangelands are, they range from 0.05 to 0.065 of an index of dryness. So most of our areas like Kitui and Taita and all those areas, we grow crops because they are in what we call subhumid areas. But the real rangelands are in semi-arid and arid areas, where the semi-arid areas, it constitutes of something like 600 millimeters of rainfall. And the arid areas is less than 400 millimeters. Sometimes in Turkana, other areas is about 200 millimeters. And that rainfall comes in 2 seasons in some areas. So it becomes even less effective because you don't have a continuous long season. That's why we talk about long rains and short rains.
All right. So what has necessitated now the move to try and manage these ecosystems?
It is very important because the issues of climate change, we talk about storing carbon in the soil, the greenhouses, so that we bring down the temperature or the climate change. If the biomass in the rangelands, which constitute about 50% of the dry lands. If we release that biomass and that area does not play the issue of absorbing carbon, put it in the grass and store it in the soil, we will see worse situations happening and the climate will change. Of course, the other important thing is it is the culture of our people. They get their livelihood from there. All their culture is around there. And if we don't take care of it, we are going to lose not only the human culture, but the biodiversity. If we talk about Kenya and all over the world, I was looking at the ranking of Ada Vision 2030 about the main areas we need to concentrate in order to grow the economy, and tourism is number one. And most of the tourist destinations are in arid lands. So we need to conserve that biodiversity, Masai Mara and other areas. And of course we have options as a country to make a decision. Do we want to go ecological, sustainable way, or do we want to go farming, trying to change the ecosystem to a cultivation ecosystem? For example, in Masai Mara, we can grow wheat. But the question is, in what we are calling comparative advantage of Kenya in the world, would we rather exchange the heritage of Masai Mara, which is connected also with our neighbor there, that wild heritage, and go into wheat farming? Why don't we buy wheat from Canada and other countries? When it gets to Mombasa, maybe it's about $100 a ton. But when we produce wheat in our country, it's $200 to $300 a ton. So in terms of comparative advantage, we better keep what we are good at and make sure it helps the whole economy, not just here.
So how is the situation now in these grasslands and rangelands? How degraded or how well managed is the situation?
Thank you. I think the biggest problem we face is degradation of these rangelands and grasslands. Reason, first, the human population has gone up. Those pastoral areas, the population is also increasing. And they are keeping the same animals. So what is happening is per capita number of animals is decreasing as the population is increasing. And according to the ecological principles, if you do not give plants and those areas to recover because of continuous grazing, what we call overgrazing, you lose the grasslands. And once you lose the grassland, you have to come to the next level of trying to restore whatever was there before. And in actual fact, right now in the whole world, we are looking at an initiative for restoration of these degraded lands. That's why this year we are also talking about the International Year of Rangelands. But within the SDG goals, there is a case of restoration of ecosystems because they have been degraded because of overuse.
All right.
Yeah.
So when we talk about restoration, is the team trying to also working with the local community, educating them on the importance of preserving these ecosystems?
Yes, we have been doing that very well. We have a lot of projects that are doing this, and maybe if I put it in a context of the coming Congress, the International Congress that we are holding from 25th of October to 29th, virtually, because we really wanted it to be physical, face-to-face, but because of circumstances of pandemic, we are going to hold it virtually. But that will still bring the interest of so many countries who will be participating, who have rangelands in their countries. I would say that the initiatives in Kenya, there are global initiatives that also we are domesticating. We also have ours. For example, under climate change, we have what we call climate adaptation funds. And we are using those funds to try to restore the rangelands where it's possible, so that people can get back into their way of life. We also have United Nations Convention on Combating Desertification, UNCCD. That United Nations UNCCD, we are party to it, and Kenya has a strategy of what we are calling attaining degradation neutrality, which means we don't want the land to be degraded. And as much as we degrade, we should also reclaim, so that we have zero balance of either negative balance. But if we can restore to what it was, and it's going to take time, then we'll be on the positive side and we'll restore the ecosystem services that were there before.
Okay. You talked about climate change. Yes. How badly are these ecosystems affected by climate change?
Very much indeed, because we are talking about ecosystem services. And one of the ecosystem services that we have in those areas are vegetation that have a bit of resilience against drought. These plants, like the acacias and even some of the grasses, once they are gone and you have a little climate variability, like now we are in a drought period, these plants are the ones who that give sustenance to the local livelihoods. For example, you have heard of people harvesting gum, the gum that comes from acacia, which is a major resource for some countries like Sudan. Is a major one because it's very useful economically, globally, and we cannot even meet the demand. That is an asset that they use to eat sometimes during the drought period. There are some trees that give some nuts. I don't know what you call them, but in English, balanitis. Sometimes those trees, during the time of drought like now, people go and harvest them and boil them and have food. If these trees are cut down because of poverty, for charcoal, when people urbanize, they want to cook with charcoal, and paraffin and other things are getting expensive now. What we are doing is going to cut more of those trees and make it charcoal. And so when there's little variability of rainfall, on the dry side, we become more vulnerable. So the risk of vulnerability of livelihoods increases when there is degradation.
Yeah. So what's the role of the communities living in that area to conserve their own ecosystem? What roles do they need to play before even other people come to try help them out?
I think they have their own traditional ways of conserving the area. They have wet and dry season grazing areas. They have ways they negotiate amongst themselves, so that if one community has more pasture than the other, they have their own traditional ways of negotiating, so that people, the communities from one side can go to the other side, because tomorrow the other community also come to the other community that because of the patchiness of rainfall, you don't know where it's going to rain. And what is challenging is we have what we call administrative boundaries, county boundaries, and even within county boundaries you have sub-county boundaries. Those are administrative boundaries, but ecological boundaries don't fit the administrative boundaries. So when, for example, you take the community from Wajir side, and they want to go and get grass from the Marsabit or Isiro side, the two communities have to talk so that the animals can move either way. And when those traditional mechanisms break down, then you have problems of conflicts, you have problems of more people becoming more vulnerable to drought and disasters.
Okay.
Yeah.
So earlier on you talked about they also keep the old traditional kind of animals.
Yes.
In this process of trying to manage these ecosystems, is there a process of also trying to help them acquire a little bit of the modern type of animals?
Oh yes, there is quite a bit of that. If I take the case of the northern country, the Somali cattle and the Somali camels are superior in many ways to other camels. And our institute, Kenya Agriculture Research and Livestock Institute organization, is actually trying to promote the breeding and the uptake of the Somali cattle and Somali camels because they produce more milk and they are bigger in body size. So that's one way. We also have the Gala goat. The Gala goat from northern Kenya is quite handy and more massive compared to our East African small goats. So we are trying to interbreed that and even promote the Gala goat, which is from our country, and to improve that bit. But more interesting is that from those areas we have Borana cattle, indigenous Borana cattle, which are very handy and very productive, and they have actually been exported to other countries now, in Australia and other places, where now the Borana cattle has been what do you call it, patented, as it were.
Okay.
And not only livestock, we also have grasses. You talked about grasses. We have several grasses from our country that have gone globally. In Brazil, all their beef industry depends on a grass that they got from Kenya called bracharia, which now Caro is trying to promote so that those areas can now get benefits of genetic improvements and all that. Yes.
Okay. Also, in terms of education, do we have a process in our system whereby we're also trying to educate young people? You are an academician yourself, and you'll be dealing a lot with this rangeland management. How is the uptake by young people to try and also help their parents manage these rangeland and grasslands?
Well, range management as a profession is well practiced where you have a large area with many livestock and one manager, so that the manager can rotate the animals from place to place. In our case, in the developing countries, particularly in Africa, we have a few challenges. I talked about the breakdown of the traditional governance system. Our Borana has a very nice system called DETHA, where they know how to move animals from here to there. Now, with the weakening of these traditional systems, if we try to introduce the American ranching system or other places where you have fewer people and more land, it cannot work.
Okay.
So we have to think of a way of educating our young people to intensify production in a system where you can produce fodder, feed it to your animal, just like what has happened in high potential areas, and so that they can make money from keeping good animals and selling them and getting profit. We started a program way back in 1980s, range management, BSc program at the University of Nairobi. And even before that time, we had Egerton was offering a diploma in range management, which was, of course, now upgraded to range management. And these young people who come, many of them, unfortunately, did not come from pastoral areas. They are from people who are agriculturists. So it has always been a problem trying to orient them to that system. But with the time, we are seeing more of the pastoral people taking interest. But it is not known. And as you know, sometimes our young people, they want to move away from their traditionalism to a new area. So it's not as attractive as it should be to these communities. Yeah.
Okay. Also growing up, there was also a lot of issues of soil erosion, and all that. Of late, I've not had people talking about soil erosions and all that. Are you saying these communities have been able to manage that kind of degradation?
Unfortunately, no. The degradation is going on at an alarming rate. And that's why you see most of our rivers brown with the soil. Because once you remove the cover of grass, you expose the supporting soil that gives the other benefits. The soil goes down. And it's very unfortunate that we don't talk about it. There's little knowledge about the negative processes going on. But there are activities by development by the Kenya government. We know, for example, FAO plus the Ministry of Agriculture, they have been promoting participatory range management system in some of those pastoral areas. And the communities can only do that in a policy framework, a legal framework that allows utilization of the resource.
All right.
I said that the traditional systems are breaking down. We have a new system, the legal system, the policy system. And we hope with the passing on of this land community bill for those dry land counties, that they can now have a legal framework at least to define the areas of improvement so that they have access to the benefits of restoration of their areas.
Okay. Thank you very much, Professor. Let's take a short commercial break and then we'll come back and continue this conversation. For our viewers back at home who have just joined us midway, we are talking today about grassland and rangeland management. And with me is Professor Jesse Theuri Njoka, who is an academician when it comes to rangeland management. We will be back in a few.